Hello, hope you're doing well. Today, I wanted to talk about AI, more specifically, its relationship with school and students. You may think, oh, I'm out of school now, so who cares? This won't impact me at all. Sadly, you're wrong. Very wrong. But before I get ahead of myself, let me lay down some groundwork. Unless you've been living under a rock, AI is everywhere. It's become sorta normal, so the hype isn't necessarily as mainstream anymore, meaning you won't have random coworkers bringing it up saying they heard about it on the news. It's still going strong though, and it's the best it's ever been and the worst it will ever be. Barring mass destruction of the world, though let's not imagine that future. I'm someone who's been following it from the sidelines. I don't really use generative AI all that much. Here and there, I'll ask ChatGPT some questions if I can't find anything on a Google search. I used to dabble with it a lot in 2023, but fell off that wagon. On a slight tangent, Google is terrible most of the time unless you add in the word Reddit after the search. And even then, it still brings you to the hellscape known as the Reddit. Who knows what you're going to find there? Now that I'm actually thinking about it, I guess I do kind of use AI more than I think. Google has their AI overview thing whenever you do a certain search. It doesn't always come up, but it does sometimes. So other than that, I rarely use AI and I don't really go out of my way to look for it. This can be ChatGPT, Microsoft Copilot, Gemini, whatever AI you think of or use. I know there's tons and tons of them out there, but I'm not really deep in the weeds with that. Personally, I think it's an addictive way to do research or ask questions. Addictive in the same way that you're able to turn your brain off during TV shows. While it's certainly more efficient and concise than trying to Google stuff, my belief is that the more you use it, the more you rely on it for everything. Is this a good or bad thing? I'm not exactly sure, only time's gonna tell. Is it gonna become a tool like the calculator or GPS? I mean, before calculators, everything was extremely tough to solve. This inevitably shrunk the pool of possible mathematicians since less people had the knowledge and skills to do it. Before GPS, maps or printed out directions were used. Of course, it was possible to travel before GPS, but it was a lot more of a hassle and you needed to learn how to read maps to use that info. Are either of these inventions really bad? Is this what AI is going to become? Something that can level the intellectual playing field and streamline tedious tasks? I do believe we are going in that direction if we aren't there already, and it makes me question what sorts of skills are going to be important as time goes on. If AI is essentially going to be doing the heavy lifting in your own thinking, then what's the point of something like school? There are way more questions than answers at the current time period. AI is a revolutionary technology. It will, and already has, changed the world. At some point, it will make us as a species question what makes a human. That's a topic for a later day, and not by some random faceless guy on YouTube. For now, I want to tackle what's currently happening in schools. It is inevitable that AI will become the focal point of schooling. There's no going back, nor should we. It is in our best interest to utilize this tech in order to create the best students and people in general. I'm going to be more focused on the college side of this debate, as I'm 7 years removed from high school and have no idea what is going on there since post-COVID. I don't even want to pretend to understand what's happening, especially now with all the brain rot and the Zoomers going wild. There will be some parallels, since they are similar, but college is still a different beast. And in theory, students are there in order to further their education. Is this what actually happens? Probably not for the majority. In college, there's a lot more individuality that occurs. No two people will have the same exact classes, therefore they are left to their own devices and are adults, so that's expected of them. For most, it's their first taste of freedom. A lot of drinking and partying occurs for a lot of students. There's nothing wrong with this. Keep this in the back of your head when thinking about this issue, that while college is technically optional, around 60% of high school graduates end up going there. I don't know the percentages, but I would say a good majority of them are going just because it's expected of them by society, or they just have no idea what they want to do. This means that a lot of the student body doesn't really care about learning and are just there to get the paper. And how do I know this? Well, that's because I was one of these people. I first went to college and I had no idea what to do. And through that, now when I think of a student and them using AI, I usually picture them asking ChatGPT to write them a 5-paragraph essay on some topic they have to write about. And actually, this past semester, I literally found that example. I had to take some bullshit art history class because I needed an art credit. I ended up sitting next to some kid, let's call him Mike, who was a sophomore and was your typical frat guy. We got along pretty well, hung out a little bit outside of class, and usually we would both be there about 15 minutes before class started. So, inevitably, we would talk. So back in October, one of the classes, we were there early, he was talking about an essay he had to do later that day and didn't start it at all. I asked, when are you going to do it? And I kid you not, he said, right now. He then proceeded to whip out his laptop, went on ChatGPT, Gave a prompt like, write me a 5-page paper on the impact of social media for adolescents. Obviously, ChatGPT generated it within 15 seconds. After witnessing this happen, I was wondering, won't this get flagged? I'm not exactly sure how these AI flag softwares work, but I would guess they have a pretty good idea of what's AI and what isn't. I mean, I guess they're not perfect, but probably close enough. But he must have read my mind because he then copied paragraph by paragraph onto another AI website called Quillbot and then used that AI to paraphrase it to sound more human. As a 25-year-old who never really used AI for school stuff at this point, I was shocked. I didn't really read the paraphrase thing that it spat out, so I don't know if it was actually good or not. But either way, I was just baffled at how brazen he was using this thing. Like, he literally just submitted it without even reading it. I mean, how can you submit something and not read a single word of the fucking thing you submitted? And look, I get it's probably a pointless assignment in a pointless class, but to not even fucking read it or ponder it at all is kind of wild. And this leads me to one of my worries with AI. I'll be upfront. I don't necessarily have any great solutions. I have kind of an idea, but it would be hard to implement. That being said, I can recognize patterns, and a big one I notice is that people are outsourcing their thinking. I know this firsthand. It annoys the shit out of me, but there are a lot of times where I just don't want to think. It's so easy to consume and just sit there getting fed TikToks or YouTube videos. Or even Google search will tell you exactly what you're looking for most of the time. Or if I'm really feeling lazy while I'm trying to read an article, I could easily paste it into ChatGPT to summarize it for me. And this is getting worse every single year for most people. The path I foresee, whether it be good or bad is up to you, is that thinking will become similar to being how healthy used to be. Ignoring everyone obviously being a major smoker in the early 20th century, if you see old pictures or videos, every single person looked skinny and in pretty good shape. It was natural. They had to do a lot more physical labor and walking and couldn't always eat as much. As time went on, people got less and less healthy. There's a million arguments and reasons as to why, but to make it simple, let's just assume it's because of a sedentary lifestyle and overeating. Over the last 50 years, people have gotten fatter, more unhealthy, and it's just sad and will take a lot to overcome. Becoming unhealthy is pretty much the new normal, and it goes against our nature. To become healthy, you have to put in effort and do what's not really required of most people anymore. This being, you have to actually go and look to eat good foods, and you actually have to go out and do physical activity because most likely you're not going to get it done if you're not actually trying to. Now compare this with thinking. It may not affect you directly at this point because you have lived long enough without things to outsource your thinking for the most part. The most outsourcing we deal with is something like listening to the news and getting your opinions from that. And this argument's a slippery slope because in essence, unless you're a primary source, then all info you learn is outsourced. However, you can still form thoughts and have certain capacity to learn new things. Just because you read something doesn't mean you agree. You have a capacity to think outside the confines of an article. What will happen when there is a whole new generation that is able to use AI like a calculator for everything? I have no idea, but we'll eventually find out. Thinking will become sort of like how working out is, voluntary. This sounds like a stretch, and I really hope it is. The way school is currently set up, though, incentivizes not actually thinking, or at least very minimal amount of thinking. It really focuses on memorization. There's little application used in what students quote-unquote learned. Even outside of school, take a look at jobs. AI streamlines most intellectual tasks, which is great. More productive output from workers, and those same workers more likely to be satisfied. Over a long period of time, though, ignoring the fact that these workers will not even be needed anymore, what is this going to do to our brains? Our brain is a muscle meant to be used, and if you don't use your muscles, they atrophy. I know firsthand just how hard it is to restart working out after not doing it for a while. Therefore, if you don't think, it will become a lot harder to do so. Again, this raises another question, like there hasn't been enough already. Does this really even matter? So what if our thinking ability declines? AI will just supplement what we lack and really make our outsourced thinking smarter. I have no idea. I lean towards it's a net negative, but then again, look at this picture. Everyone is apprehensive to change, especially new progressive thinking. Historically, progressivism is almost inevitable. It's impossible to predict the outcomes of where this AI revolution is going to take us. I was going to argue the fact that if we outsource all our thinking, then in 50 years the average person will really be dumbed down. Even if that's the case, what does it matter? AI will just supplement and enhance anyone anyway. This raises larger questions about humans and their future place as a whole, But again, that's for smarter people to think about rather than myself. Let me get back to the schooling aspect. Modern schooling focuses on how correct a student is, not how much they have learned. In a real world, trial and error is the greatest tool in learning. You try and try and try, and then fail and fail and fail, until one day your fail is a success and you succeed in your goal. Schooling teaches students to be afraid of failing. I'm honestly still getting over that fear. For example, I want every video of mine to pop off, and when it doesn't, there's some sadness and kind of makes me fear putting up the next one. Yet the videos that do bad teach me so much more about what not to do or figure out where I went wrong. When you fail a test for not memorizing things correctly, you get reprimanded with a bad grade. Here's a nice quote from Addison Mayo in this article. Modern education increasingly grades students not strictly on how much they learn, but how well they massage the system. This essentially refers to grades other than a final, which in theory is supposed to confirm you learned an adequate amount of information to pass the class. Yet most classes are passable without acing the final exam. Therefore, as long as you don't get caught, why should the student not use AI? In all honesty, I'm not really sure if there's a good solid case anymore. Most of the stuff that is taught is negligent for whatever profession the student ends up in, or even professions where that knowledge is needed. AI can just answer or assist you on the job. Then take into account most of these students are 18 to 22 years old. I'm only a couple years removed from being that age, so I have a pretty good perspective on how these people think. Is school really their biggest priority right now as a 22 or 18 or 21-year-old? Between dating, partying, video games, going to the club, being in a club, TV shows, freedom from their parents for the first time, and the fact that a lot of these kids don't have any idea what they're even at college for. Studying is daunting. I can't stand it. I never had to do it when I was younger because I was blessed with a good memory. So when I first got to college, it was a struggle. It's no wonder why they would use AI. Not only does it save time, but it can also pretty reliably give the user a great grade. As long as they don't get caught, and if they do, it's not the end of the world. I do want to bring up that cheating in college is not anything new. Of course it's not. I've used my fair share of Chegg back in the day during my freshman and sophomore years. This was pre-COVID and pre-ChatGPT. It's actually kind of funny because Chegg has got absolutely crushed by AI, and it was tanking before then as teachers started to catch on and started to change their tests and all that other stuff, so enrollment was also down. But their whole model got evaporated overnight by ChatGPT and other generative AIs. They had their own little stint of trying to do their own Chegg AI or whatever the fuck it was called. It didn't work because why would anybody pay $10 a month for something they can get for free by a million other ones? But this is the exact reason why I'm a little more worried about how easy this is. Before, you would have to pay Chegg for their subscription to use everything, or just hope you can eventually find the PDF file you were looking for on Google. This wasn't impossible, but now you can literally take a picture on your phone with Question AI, and it will read and give you the correct answer. I actually learned that one from the kid who did the 5-paragraph essay, and I might have tried it just to see how good it was, and I promise you it is as good as advertised. It's free, you can download it on your phone, you can bring it anywhere you want. Literally snap a picture of a question, it deciphers it, shoots out an answer, and it's pretty reliably right. There are students who don't cheat at all, and that's quite impressive by them, especially with all the avenues that they could do it. Based off of what I've seen and heard and just honestly looked around in my classes, I would guess around 60% of students cheat. And again, that's only when I'm looking at people use their laptops in class to do the work because they're not paying attention to the professor. And they might not cheat on everything, so there's definitely some things where it's a lot more risky to do it on, like a test. But like a homework, unless you're super obvious with it, it's very easy to get away. Now, to be fair, there are probably also a lot of students who use AI to help them study or do their homework. If used properly, something like ChatGPT can be a personal assistant. You can have it generate quizzes on the topic you're studying. If you answer any questions wrong, it can then come up with some precise tutoring for you. If you do enough studying with ChatGPT, it may even be able to analyze how you learn and teach you based off that information. The possibilities are endless with it. It's a powerful tool in the right hands, and it's an interesting skill to have. This is a good idea in theory, but how much of that is actually happening? It would be a great step in the right direction for schooling if it was just a higher number, yet, like I said before, I glanced at so many students in my class, and most of them are using AI just to answer easy McGraw-Hill accounting questions. I don't have any problems with cheating. I take issue with why there is a need to cheat in the first place. If classes were designed better and they felt meaningful, then there would be less cheating. Something has to change, since it is just way too easy and way too tempting to do it. I don't think banning AI is the solution. In a strange way, AI is like using drugs. If something becomes illegal and you still want to use it, then you're still going to find a way to use it. If you know anything about prohibition, all that did was give power to the mobs and people still kept drinking alcohol. Obviously, there's a lot more downsides to drinking and doing drugs than using AI, but it's more the premise I'm talking about. If schools try to ban AI, then nothing's going to get better. Students will, like they always do, find ingenious ways to cheat the system. Changing systems, especially established ones, take a very long time to change. There's just so much bloat and administration and money involved, it's going to be tough no matter who tries to do it. If I had to guess, it's probably going to start at smaller colleges and then implement their ways up once they see something worked. And I'm sure all colleges are having conversations about AI and what to do with it, but we're just in a weird transition period. This applies to everything in our society. So far, from my understanding, AI is being implemented into the administration part of colleges. For example, Rutgers uses AI in their admissions process to identify possible successful students. Schools can use AI to identify retention and percentages of students failing classes early on. There are multiple uses behind the scenes like paperwork crap and other tedious tasks. As for actual class, I think it really depends on the professor. Currently, that seems like there's a hesitation to use AI, but again, this is a case-by-case basis. AI is causing all sorts of havoc, not just in schools either. This is where you will be affected even if you aren't in school anymore. There are debates and strikes and negotiations between employers and unions, for example. Take just the past couple years, and you have had a lot of strikes regarding AI and job security. In 2023, we had the writers' strike, the recent dock workers' strike in October, which, ironically, their agreement's about to end, so they might start striking again next week. And if you follow Call of Duty at all, there's a massive voice acting strike going on by these companies trying to use voices that aren't actually theirs and using AI to make shit up. It's fucking crazy. And individually, these strikes aren't all that important, but at some point, every job will come under fire by AI, and these results will set precedent. There's a reason why no one wants to be hasty with these decisions. This relates to how colleges are going to roll out AI and its uses. Nowadays, college feels less important than it ever has been, and will probably only get worse. If the experience of college turns into 4 years of using AI to answer questions, employers will start to question whether or not these graduates are good enough applicants, especially considering they already have questions about Zoomers in the workplace. To answer the main question of the video, is AI ruining school? I have to say, after all this talking, I have no idea. The more I thought about this topic, the more questions I came out asking. As things currently are, yes, AI is ruining school, but if it ends up leading to proper change and some good changes that make school even better, then, well, it's not ruining school, it's just a little hiccup in the road. Either it be a good or bad thing, or if it's ruining school or not ruining school, I think a looming question for myself and a lot of young people is what's going to be AI proof? The job market already looks a little bit shaky for recent graduates, and just in general, you don't want to put all your time into something that won't end up being there anyway. Physical labor is certainly not going to go away, but I'm lazy and I'm a soft-handed person who would not fit doing that. I have great respect for blue-collar guys, and they are extremely important to our society. If there's a recent high school graduate, I would recommend going to trade school over college, unless they have something specific they want to go to college for, like being a doctor, a nurse, a lawyer, an engineer, something like that. But if you don't know what you want to do, rather than spend all the money going to college, going to trade school and becoming a blue-collar guy, joining a union. My father did that, and he made a good living after a while. Again, it's grueling work, long hours, but in the long run, it's probably worth it and the smart thing to do. Another skill that's not going away are people skills, and you don't really need college for that either. I learned more about people working at a retail job than I have ever learned anything I could have at school about people. Even something like a creative endeavor are in jeopardy, like writing or even some art professions. Take something like coding, and especially all the recent layoffs going on in Silicon Valley. That's going to drastically change, and I would argue that this is now the most accessible thing any layman could use. Going back to the calculator example, I would say coding is probably the most similar to this, as now people can just code with real words, not the fucking language like Python, Java. I tried doing that before, and I'm way too dumb to be doing all that. But overall, it's just hard to predict where things are going to go. Just 6-ish years ago, the prediction was that all truck drivers would be gone by now and replaced with self-driving trucks. And look where we are. Still not really close. Again, in the long run, it's probably going to happen, but for right now, there's nothing to worry about. As it is currently, college is really only useful for most people through its credentials and it's a fun experience. Though for how much it costs, there are probably way better ways to have fun. It's not like nothing is learned here. There are some useful things, but by the time you get the degree and credentials, not only do most graduates forget material, all the stuff they use for their jobs is learned on the job. And if there is something they do not know how to do, well, either ask a manager or ask ChatGPT. I wish I had more answer to this question, and hopefully I can get some insightful comments that can enlighten me with some new ideas and things I didn't consider. The only solution I can really think of and have actually thought could possibly work, I haven't done any specifics though, and I think it would have to be a teacher by teacher or professor by professor basis. But basically, the school would have its own sponsored AI that the students would be forced to use to show proof that they did it on there. So essentially, it's like a school chat GPT that would be a little bit more limited in what it could do. So, for example, if you were asking the answer to this math problem, it would maybe guide you at most, but it wouldn't just straight up tell you the answer. But then you have to prove that you were actually trying to use the AI that they gave you, so then therefore you attempted to do the problem rather than just copied it from some outside source, though you could still do that anyway. So again, I don't really know what the solution is going to be, but I'm honestly excited to find out what happens, and I'm kind of regretful that I'm not going to be able to experience it. But eventually, these administrators, even though there's a lot of question marks about them, they'll figure something out, and I think it'll eventually work. But right now, things need to change, and change drastically. They should have changed a long time ago, but again, I'll probably come out with another video later after reading some of your comments, hopefully, with some cool ideas, and make an update to this, and then kind of see what happens from there. So, if you enjoyed the video, thanks for sticking around, and have a great one.